Good afternoon, CET 116 students. It's me coming to you again live. I apologize for some of the glitches we had in the last video series. My screen share didn't flip over as much as I wish it would have. Today I'm coming to you again, and hopefully I'm trying to work through some of the bugs of computer technology, and today was not a great day for this. So hopefully this video goes a little bit smoother. Today what I want to do is continue our series on subdivisions. This is module 4, and in this particular series what I do is I want to talk about the process called the preliminary plan. I want to refer back to the Title 16 part of the Pueblo County subdivision regulations. Once again, Title 16 really is a good guide for anyone who would do the subdivision process, because I think it's not really complex, as I've seen some and many really municipal governments, like city governments, maybe even much more meticulous than this. And even as they get more populated and more metro districts, it's much bigger. So this is a really good one. It's big enough to have enough rigor, but yet but it is doable or accomplishable. So today I'd like to take you through Title 16. Now I know I'm building up all of these so that we'll have some questions and some answers and everything at the end of this. So please follow along through the series. So again, today we're going to start out with Title 16 of subdivision regulations. So now I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you all, and the screen I'm going to pull up today is Title 16 or subdivision regulations. I am going to pull this, and this is Title 16. The areas that I'm going to be looking at particularly in Title 16 are the pages 10 through 11 and pages 33 through 36, as you can see over here along the side. If you remember, in our last video series, we talked about the review process of the sketch plan as well as the submittal information or requirements for the sketch plan. Today, we're going to talk about the preliminary plan. So the preliminary plan, in my opinion, is probably one of the most important sections of this for the civil engineer, because this is really where the civil engineering comes in, because this, in my opinion, in what falls under preliminary plan is really where the engineer does their planning. This is where we talk about all the things that go in with engineering-based drawings and all of the things that a civil engineer would contribute in doing that. So I'm going to start out by talking to you a little bit about how the regulations work. Again, up here in the first part of it, in the the submission and review of preliminary plan process, we start out here with just this is how you submit, and how you get approval. And then as we jump down here into number pages 33, you'll see that in 16.28 here, we'll talk about the preliminary plan requirements. So we'll be talking over here about 16-12 here, which is subdivision and review of preliminary plan. And then we'll go on down to 16-28, which is preliminary plan requirements. I do encourage you to follow along with me in your subdivision regulations if you'd like to highlight some of these points as we go through and talk about that. Okay, so I'm going to jump down into page 10 here. I'm trying to expedite this a little bit here. And we get into the submission process. So again, the submission process for the preliminary plan is much similar to the sketch plan. Remember, the sketch plan was trying to give the county commissioners an idea in general how to do this subdivision. Now, in the preliminary plan, we're getting much more detailed. It will be going to the Board of County Commissioners again, and then the board would then be turning it over to, in this situation, and in most municipalities like this, a planning commission or someone with the expertise in here. Now, in this situation, we're probably going to have a lot more of an expert opinion on this, probably professional engineers and professional surveyors who will be scrutinizing some of the data. If the municipal agents don't have the expertise on there, they will be hiring the expertise on there to approve or disapprove some of the things that go along here. This is probably one of the most contentious places for the professionals, because this is where they really talk about the working operations of the subdivision. I do want to draw your attention to something that's really impressive here, is that they allow the Board of Commissioners here will allow this to stay for 18 months. They can actually have up to 18 months to look at this and analyze and this preliminary information. That's a whole lot of time in there to be doing that. So you can see that it's really important that they get their time in being able to do this. So this is something that could go on for a long time. Excuse me. The preliminary plan referral and review. Well, who does it go to? Of course, I said it goes to the board of the county commission, and then it would be turned over to the planning commission. Here are some other entities that are important to know about. In this one here, we're inviting the school district. The school district would have to see whether or not they feel they could accommodate the number of residents that would be coming into this. Could they accommodate them in their school? So they have to play a part in this. Now we're asking that the developer look a little bit further outside the parameters of the subdivision. In particular, we're looking to go in a 2-mile radius of the subdivision and start to looking at some of the existing conditions and existing other areas that would be affected in this. We would also be looking at any utility location, improvement location, service districts, ditch companies, anything that might be impacted by this. The Forest Service should be involved here, especially if you're starting to come up against forest land services or for forest land areas. The Planning Commission should also look at different areas that have jurisdiction over that. By that I mean either state or federal agencies. One might be it talks here about the soil conservation area and soil conservation district. The soil, they would have to look at this from a flooding standpoint and see whether or not if some change into the land type here would cause an undue flooding situation, or would it be for the future residents of this a flood condition issue. That's something they would look at. They'd also be looking at the Department of Health, because the possibility, depending on the size of the tracts, that they would be putting up either some sewage treatment facility or an individual sewage treatment facility on each lot. In our particular subdivision here, we're using 2-acre lots. So therefore, that would be, those would be lots that are fairly large in size, which means we could use an individual sewage disposal system. And if I were to recommend to the owner in this particular development, that's probably what I would recommend. In that, I would mean that each individual facility would have their own sewage treatment facility, a tank, and then that tank would then have a filtration system that would then handle the liquids and separate the liquids and the solids. That would be taken into consideration. So you can only do these on areas where you have a lot of area so that you could put the infiltrator system and everything in there. So this particular lots of our size would in fact be eligible for individual sewage disposal systems. This usually comes because it doesn't make it, it's usually not cost effective for a sewage treatment district to come in and service such a small amount of sites, because each one of those sites would cause a tap and sewage and sewage into the plant, plus as well as piping and all those sort of things that go along with that, which makes it really expensive. So in this situation, our subdivision, we probably would be looking at individual sewage disposal. Here we'd also look at the state engineer, making sure that water rights and historic rights, any sort of estimated water yield, or any sort of impact on the water supply of the county, state, city, and federal agencies should be taken into consideration. This is also where you have to look under the Stormwater Management Act and see whether or not the developer in the future of this subdivision is definitely considering those things. That's also one of the reasons we put the stormwater areas to consider in our subdivision. We'd also consider the U.S. Geological Survey here. USGS would be looking at it from impact on what happens if they're going to use this land and what does that do to the U.S. Geological Survey's ability to manage the land and see whether or not implications of changing the land's characteristics do impact their operations. Also might have other things the Planning Commission may choose to get in. Any other entities that might be definitely needed to be talked about in this area. That particular things such as one of my recommendations would be someone like taking excuse me, I'm checking my timer as we go along here. Areas like a water district, or maybe a particular zoning district that happens to be in this area that might be considered. The county commission can reach out to those and make sure that they are considered in there. So this is their clause that allows them to get back to any of those entities. Then within submittal of the transmittal day, the commission has 35 days to get back and make sure that they can go back and those people can get back and get an opportunity to get their say-so in the planning of this. And then the board can take action if they're favorable, and in which they would pursue on to the final plat process at this time. So at this time, this is the preliminary, or how the submittal process takes place. So I'm going to jump back down into page 33 of the documents, and I'm going to start out here with the preliminary plan requirements. Now, these are requirements going to be actually on the plan. So as I said when I initially said it, this is where I believe all of the actually engineering decisions are made, and those decisions are made and told and to the proposed municipality that this subdivision will be done in compliance with their goals and objectives of their particular entity. I just want to stop and pause right there because I'm kind of watching the clock. I'm going to try to keep my videos to about 15 minutes at a time. So we're approaching 12 minutes right here now. So I may be stopping here as we go along and picking it up into a second video of module 4. Okay, so now we'll be talking about the preliminary plan requirements. So the contents of the preliminary plan application. It should have and you'll see it gets very meticulous now. It talks about the number of plans, the size of the drawings. In here we talk about it should have the name of the subdivision here. We should have information about all of the particular owners that have all of the rights and anything that may encumber that property. We must have a developer, and this subdivision must at least contain 20 or more, a minimum of 20 lots, and we should have proof of the developer that they actually do have a license to develop. Also, you'll see item E here has a legal description of the area to be subdivided and its acreage. So now we have to have very meticulous legal description, very meticulous acreage. We should have a map of the proposed subdivision and show the characteristics and what we're going to do. Now our map is getting much more meticulous and a little more tighter here. It's not just a sketch, but now it's getting very detailed. Need a location and vicinity of the map to show generally where it is with respect to other places. Any existing and planned streets and highway systems, zoning districts, taxing districts, special districts like that. We're also going to be looking at the significant vegetation patterns here. Are there trees on the lot? Is it land? Is it vacant land? And what sort of considerations are we going to make if we start to cut that all up? And then the maps themselves. There must be an outline of the outer boundary, which defines the actual subdivision to be made. Any abutting property lines. I'm going to go right in here because this may look familiar to you all. This is item 3 on here, and it asks for a traverse map. Those of you in the surveying class have remember encountering this, as well as we've encountered the rules and regulations for the creation of a land survey plat. This section here would require that the outer boundary is actually had a traverse run on it, that it does close mathematically, and it does meet the error closure guidelines, and that legal description does in fact close and mathematically meet the criterion of the Land Survey Plat Act that we practiced earlier in the semester. That being said, I'm going to finish at section 3, and we'll pick this up at the next video session. So this is Professor Minsick coming to you, CET 116. This is module 4, video 1, or the first video. I am going to stop this right now. So let me stop the share, and I'm going to stop the recording, and please stay tuned for the second in the video series.